It began with the forging of the great gamer rings. 3 were given to the Chad Todd Howard, immortal, wisest, and fairest of all beings. 7 to the Stardew Moon harvesters, great miners and craftsmen of the farming fields. And 9 rings were gifted to the Sweats of Fortnite, who, above all else, desire power. For within these rings was bound the strength and the will to govern each drop. But they were all of them deceived, for another ring was made. Deep in the land of Mordor, in the fires of Mount Doom, the Dark Lord Sauron forged a master ring, and into this ring he poured his cruelty, his malice, and his will, to dominate all life, one ring to ruin them all.
Today we'll be playing the Xbox version of The Lord of the Rings Gollum, which I got on sale for $2. It should be noted that while I've never played this game, I know its reputation and it's apparently terrible. I was excited for this game pre-release. I'm a pretty big Lord of the Rings fan, but the low ratings turned me off of it. Until now, anyway. We must suffer for art. Booting up, I'm greeted with the start menu. An atmospheric droning track plays as Gollum crouches there, looking back and forth. All hope drained from my eyes upon the visage of this model. Gollum looks like he's about to rob a liquor store and then post about it on R-Meth. He looks like the Coomer Wojak. He looks incredibly greasy, which is crazy for a game that has a designated Gollum hair simulation option. Seriously, Gollum hair simulation is one of the only 3 graphical settings this game has. Incredible. The main menu has a collectible screen telling me there's 35 things to collect. Bugs? I'm not sure what a guy like Gollum would collect. This screen is notable for having Gollum's terrible, sinful hands that scratch at Gollum over and over for some reason. The final menu option before we begin the game is DLC, and I want to touch on this right off the bat. The DLC leaves an incredibly poor taste in my mouth. The first is the emote pack, which is what it says on the tin. 6 emotes that you're expected to pay $2.99 for, but this is a single player game, so who am I expected to emote on? Was this a trial run for when they bring Gollum to Fortnite? I have no idea what the emotes are at the time of writing, but the copy states it's 6 iconic emotes which you can use to proclaim
my precious.
But the Steam reviews mention all of them being about bugs, which is weird and lends to my theory that the collectibles are bugs. The second DLC, Sindarin, adds additional voiceover lines of elves speaking in Sindarin, the cool elven language you would expect elves to speak in. I have no idea why this would cost extra and just not be baked into the game as it is. I can't imagine being so greedy that I would charge people an extra $2.99 for voice lines. Absolutely diabolical. The third DLC is the Lore Compendium, which expects the player to pay an extra $4.99 for access to lore. The copy reads, "As you progress, this interactive menu gives you more and more key information about the game's characters, locations, and events in addition to the history of Middle-earth." I don't really know how a game could be more anti-player. This is so disgusting that it makes me glad this game was dead on arrival. Such a large part of Tolkien's magic is the lore, and it chills my bones to know that some brain-dead game executive thought it was a good idea to hold that hostage. It would be scummy in a free-to-play game, but for a paid one? I would love to know who came up with this idea so I can rebuke them personally. Already angry, disgusted, repulsed, I began my journey. The game begins with Gollum and Smeagol conversing, reciting a poem that seems poorly written while enjoying cave paintings.
Time is not spent, roses has no scent. At nothing you can marvel without me. But it wasn't roses, my precious.
Gollum, or Smeagol, his real name, is a corrupted hobbit or halfling. Our hobbit friend has a bit of a split personality, with the violent and twisted Gollum fighting for space against the kinder, softer remnants of Smeagol. Smeagol is a finder of the One Ring, the ring of immense power. The ring corrupts him, creating the monstrous personality Gollum over a few hundred years. When the ring makes off with Bilbo Baggins, though, it leaves Gollum chasing after his precious. This game takes place between The Hobbit, where the ring leaves Gollum, and before The Lord of the Rings, where Gollum reunites with it in a nail-biting way. The game moves to Gollum in a jail cell, where he's interrogated by a wizard, Gandalf the Grey, although it isn't stated. It seems the game is meant to be from Gollum's limited perspective, so we'll only know what he knows. Gandalf inquires about Gollum's time in Mordor, the Blacklands. It should be noted that the voice of Gollum is not great, nor is Gandalf's, and it feels more like if you asked your friends to voice these iconic characters rather than professionals.
We believe that he went to Mordor. That's what I feared.
Casting these characters can't be easy, and you're competing with the movies, but it still feels very flat at best and cringe at worst.
Leave us. I want to hear what he has to say.
Flashing back as the tale is told to Gandalf, we gain control of Gollum in the mountains of Mordor. Moving and jumping around, Gollum feels misaligned. Floaty, imprecise, I die almost immediately just trying to get a handle on myself. I can already tell it's gonna be a long game. I make my way through the opening cave, missing jumps and burning myself on an open flame just to feel something. It's very dark and it takes me a moment to find the next thing I'm supposed to leap towards every time.
We hate this land. Hate it. It's a long jump again, I guess.
Gollum says as I'm mid-regular jump and I fall and break my neck. It's almost comical, and I'm stunned, staring at Gollum's mangled corpse. Eventually I hit a cutscene and watch as a fell beast flies on by, and it's important to note how not great the models look. Instead of a fearsome flying beast, we get jank. I then vibe into an orc cave, clearly having killed the orc in question, as I keep its skull as a Dahmer-esque curio. Cave paintings, an etching of the One Ring, and a shrine to Shelob stand as points of interest, though I'm not very interested. If only because of the voice acting.
Nasty light! Smeagol wants to sleep!
I got an achievement for looking at everything in the cave, though that was only because I couldn't find the exit and I thought I had to look at everything. The next sequence begins, and I chase after a spying bird, an assumed agent of Sauron.
Filthy little spy. It will tell the wraiths.
I die a few times, cracking Gollum's skull open here and there as I make my way. Eventually, I'm spotted by two orcs, but I keep going past them.
Insect jump! Back to the channel, come on!
A second bird joins in the chase, and I lose them both before tumbling into the Follow the Orcs mission. This mission becomes Eliminate the Orcs, with Gollum fearing that they'll report his location to Mordor. It ends with strangling one orc from behind and throwing rocks at a lantern so the second orc will fall into darkness and be eaten by Shelob. The throwing mechanic of this game is very bad, using a very high arc, and I missed the first 6 or so stones. I have no idea why the arc is that high, it's incredibly crazy. I am then presented with my first in-game choice. You can guide Gollum's personality through his morality, pushing him towards the good Smeagol or the evil, well, Gollum. As the two personalities converse over the squashing of a bug, we're introduced to the argument mechanic. It's trying to select the right topic to convince the other personality. The visual is just Gollum on a foggy gray background, and it looks like garbage. Winning the argument as Smeagol, the bug is saved, and I am quickly menaced by a Nazgul, forced to worm my way into a cave to escape. This doesn't last long, and the wraiths are quickly on Gollum in a scripted loss. As Gollum recounts his capture, Gandalf kicks him, which is funny.
From the Shire!
Gollum tells his ring-seeking torturers, and Chapter 1 is complete. As Chapter 2 begins, Gollum finds himself in a slave pit, a reoccurring theme, physical slavery mirroring his slavery to the ring, and meets his bunk besties. The cellmates are Frail Man, a frail man, and Cruel Orc, a cruel orc, and Sick Man, a sick man. After getting tossed a slave tag and throwing it back for Cruel Orc,
Hey, that's pretty good.
we're off to sleep. Leaving the cell in the morning, Gollum heads off to see the Beastmaster, who acts as an overseer for specific labor. It's worth noting that the loading time for this game feels long for what it is, and I don't know if it's poor optimization or something else. After walking through the Spit Tunnel, we're tasked by the Beastmaster to herd borax, aggressive bestial creatures, and we do so with tutoring from the Frail Man. This segment feels random, and I get an achievement for dying during. After successfully enduring the chore, we're moved to the mines, but not before passing a witch in a cage with a terrifying face.
Water.
No water, no nice water.
For my next task, I was sent to collect the tags of dead slaves at the behest of the mine foreman Krishnak. Krishnak? Whatever. After parkouring around like a psychopath, I come across a dying man. With the option to take his tag or leave him, I left him. However, after dying, the game reloaded me directly into that choice again and gave me his tag. He didn't die though, still breathing when I walked by him again later. This mission took me ages, if only because I had accidentally gone out of order, so the last tag I needed was all the way at the beginning, and that took me a hot minute to figure out. It was very frustrating, and I was already ready for the game to end. The next section has Gollum crawling to light explosives, and funny enough, the first of these 3 sections is the hardest. In exchange for this work, the frail man, Sephut, offers to tell him a secret, and shocker, it's about hoarded explosives the guards don't know about.
Where is better here? Frail man can tell us secrets now.
Remember the dwarves I mentioned earlier? One of them told me something once. He'd steal red stones and hide them in a cave near the bridge. Just one stone each day, so the guards wouldn't notice.
Why?
Why do you think?
That's not a nice story.
The cruel orc, Logri, or Prison Daddy, punches Gollum in the face, which is fine. The next scene opens with Gollum fishing for sewer duty and getting it.
The stink is all yours. Ah, you stink already.
After falling a few stories and landing in fun water, a chase sequence with borax begins, ending with crawling into a Super Mario pipe. While the chase isn't difficult, I had an issue finding the wall latching to climb up to the pipe because I'm dense. After climbing up a well, I was faced with navigating a guard-heavy section. The issue with the orc guards is Gollum can only strangle ones without helmets, which is less than ideal. The game would be a lot more fun if I could disable them all in more interesting ways. After dying multiple times, I made my way through the area, taking the lift up. My mission was to find a map of the tower drawn by an old dwarven engineer. I jumped down into a blood lake with the goal of climbing back up again to get to a metal shack. Falling and climbing up and jumping down again are very big themes in this game, playing out over and over. I appreciate the use of vertical space, but when it's overt by only Chapter 2, there might be pacing issues. During this ascent to the metal shack, I kept accidentally hitting restart level instead of restart from last checkpoint when I died, meaning I had to do this section 3 times over. This wore my nerves raw, and though it was my own mistake, it made me question the UI design.
This one looks like the tower. Nasty tower of light.
Continuing, Gollum adds an explosive redstone to a barrel, blowing up a bridge, though by this point in my run I couldn't really tell you explicitly why. In my frustration, I was slowly losing the story beats. The frail man taught us how to place the explosives and then sent us off to do this, and I'm sure the goal was to escape, but how I couldn't say. I'd spent 3 hours on Chapter 2, and it felt so much longer than that. The terrible physics, control, acting, all of it was eating away at me. I really hoped this was the worst it would be. In the end, Gollum is captured for his crime of blowing up the bridge, though he avoids punishment due to being marked by Sauron. Unable to kill him, the cruel woman, a figure seen throughout the slave pit preaching about the power of Sauron, interrogates Gollum. Left with a choice on who to blame, I went with the Smeagol option of blaming the cruel orc, covering for the frail man. Watching as our prison daddy is taken away to his execution, the chapter ends. According to the Xbox achievement statistics, 60% of players finish Chapter 1, which isn't great, but it includes everybody who bought the game and at least launched it once. This number drops to 51% for the Welcome to Mordor achievement, which can be earned just by dying at any time during Chapter 2. Similarly, the Wait, Not Yet achievement can also be earned by dying in lava, which is all over Chapter 2, and it has a 39% earn rate. The achievement rate for actually completing Chapter 2 is 21%. Truly, Chapter 2 is the great filter.
The great eye sees us.
Chapter 3 begins with a new assignment in the breeding pits. Tasked with feeding time, Gollum must go around pulling levers to dump food for the developing orcs. I found this interesting. Orc breeding pits are more of a movie thing than a book thing, and this game uses only the licensing for the books, I'm assuming, hence the difference in appearance of Gollum and Gandalf. The books mention Saruman's foul craft to make orcs rapidly, but both adaptations going with pits is funny, though the game is obviously inspired. That aside, this part makes no sense to me. Why didn't the dudes who filled the feeders just pull the levers themselves? After finishing, I returned to the cell, where Gollum and the frail man plan their escape.
Tower, sewer, carts, and off through the gate.
The next day, in a bit of convenient narrative, we're taken up to the Tower of Light. We were told earlier that the Tower of Light is the only way out of the slave pit. They say prisoners go up, but never come back. Going up, we're ordered to wait for the Candleman, a priest of Sauron overseeing the whole operation. He's busy speaking with the mouth of Sauron when we arrive, a canonical character who has a Lego minifig. Instead of waiting to be summoned like a good Smeagol, we creep into the Candleman's office, eavesdropping. After talking about a bridge collapse in a letter and a threat towards the Candleman's family, the mouth of Sauron departs with hostility. Ready for me, I go in and visit the freaky Candleman. After a brief questioning, I give up the frail man even though I just had the cruel orc killed to protect him minutes ago. For some reason, I'm then tasked with breeding birds, and I just don't get this game. While birds act as Sauron's spy network, it feels strange to randomly ask Gollum to do this instead of literally anyone else. The puzzle involves coloring an egg either white, brown, or black, and warming it with the right mixture of fire and air, with each egg color having a different requirement. There are paintings around the area to clue the player in on how much fire and air to use, but the game is so dark I had no idea what I was doing half the time. Eventually, through luck, I'm able to hatch a white bird. Gollum names the hatchling Little One. Surprisingly, this is the end of Chapter 3, and I was delighted by how quickly it went.
No, let me explain. Oh, shut up, Grishnig!
Chapter 4 begins years later. I have a new friend, the lovable Grishnig, a basement dweller who has a weird accent.
No, please, you don't have to do that.
New to the slave pit, we act as a mentor for him in the same way the frail man was a mentor for Gollum. I help him round up the borax in the beast pit. Poorly, I kill him 5 times, with a new companion mode before I'm off to old Candleman's place. At this point, it's clear Gollum is a regular here, as if it were a diner he hits up after work. So much of this game is running through locations I've been to before to get to the next story beat, except you can't seem to run for long in these areas. I think they shortened the stamina bar. Other times, you're tasked following people, which is torturous as they move so slowly. This game is very uncaring of the player's time, in my opinion. At the instruction of the Candleman, I chase my bird around and feed it, leading into a second tutorial for companion mode. The Candleman then pops off about hating elves and killing Bilbo. The Candleman's daughter, the cruel woman who's always hanging out in the slave pit, is up to naughty biz, so for the next 2 sequences, we stalk her.
I would have told you.
It's the daughter.
Wouldn't I? You search over there.
This is a weird section because it seems like Gollum is in the tower every day, so it wouldn't be weird for him to be around. I really dislike the stalking missions in this game, though I guess it makes more sense than bird breeding. The cruel woman is after information about the ring, seeking the orc Snara. Gollum, wanting to keep her out of it, reaches Snara first and kills him.
Where is it? Where is it now? No!
Snora!
He sneaks back to his cell, ending chapter 4. This faster pacing of chapters is very much appreciated.
What are you talking about?
Closer, so we can tell him what we learned about the Candleman's spy and who murdered him tonight.
Which one is he? The fat one. You, come with us.
Why? Grashnak has done nothing wrong, we swears.
Just a couple of questions. Nothing to worry about.
Chapter 5 returns to Slogcore. It opens with Gollum and Smeagol finally hatching an escape plan after years of just hanging out in the slave pit. Gollum seeks to escape through the execution chamber in the sewers and needs a cart driver to get him through the gates completely. After setting up the Grishnag, who was formerly a cart driver, on false murder charges, Gollum enters the Candleman's study. When he's distracted, Gollum frees the bird he synthesized. After some platforming and using companion mode, the bird steals the Candleman's keys, delivering them to Gollum. This enables Gollum to access the bird tower, a rundown section of the aviary. Through this, he enters the execution chamber. Execution is done by vaporization, the result of being hit by the glow of a strange pillar of light. After parkouring around this flashing death sentence, the cart carrying the Grishnag appears next in line. Swiftly, Gollum pulls a lever, dropping both he and the Grishnag into the sewer. Aligned to help one another, there's a puzzle about raising and lowering the water levels with the handicap that the Grishnag is unable to swim. After pulling the levers in the right sequence and killing the Grishnag once for fun, the two make their way out. After murdering 2 orcs and earning the Orc Murderer achievement, Gollum hides in the cart while the Grishnag drives. Moving towards the gate, Gollum uses his bird to hit the bell, allowing them to pass. Gollum tells the Grishnag about Shelob's cave, but the two are separated shortly after, with the cage Gollum is hiding in being confiscated, thought to house a spider. Now in the catacombs, we murder a distracted orc and return to Slogfest. This chapter seems to follow the chapter 2 ethos of just being really long for no good reason. Now in spider territory, a majority of the enemies are, well, spiders, which includes spiders being able to climb around on the walls like Gollum is. While it makes sense in concept, the controls of this game are difficult to the point where any precise movement while vertical is almost impossible. It got to the point where I just began ramming through these sections uncaring. After almost getting pincered in a narrow tunnel by 2 spiders, I make it to the other end. This segment ends with some platforming, culminating in a sprint past 1 million spiders. Gollum is a #survivor. After platforming up a hole, we're introduced to crawling under carts. The carts are actually great for hiding, and it isn't long before I meet back up with the good homie Grishnag. News is spread of Gollum's escapes, and the guards are tasked with checking every cart for a duo of escapees, so the Grishnag tells Gollum to find another way out, lest they both get caught. Alone, Gollum makes it through a bat cave and is greeted with sunlight. The Grishnag makes it out as well, however keeps driving without Gollum, leaving him behind. Tasked with another sneak section, my loathing for this game is increasing. It's more sneaking past guards, hiding under carts. The second section's checkpoint failed to activate, so every time I died there, I got sent back to the first one, which was incredibly frustrating. I constantly fell into the Borat cages, which was a guaranteed death. After the 5th time in the cage, I realized there was a climbable wall out, but because the game is so dark, I'd never noticed it. When I finally managed to crawl out and continue the level, my controller wouldn't stop rumbling, leaving me trying to platform with a rumbling controller. Clearing this section, I got to the moving cart section where I'm supposed to hang on and dodge obstacles, hide from foes, but again my controller wouldn't stop rumbling. It stops when I pause, and I clearly need to reset the game, but I'm afraid that if I do, I'll have to start from the beginning of Chapter 5, and I would rather get arthritis than replay this. I completed the 3 cart sections and the final platforming section with my controller vibrating the entire time, and clear Chapter 5. The rumbling ends.
俺の名はエレン・イエガー。
So you killed him?
Never. He was our friend. Cruel light. It hurts our eyes.
Your only friend, I would imagine. What was his name?
Eagle.
Chapter 6 has Gandalf pop back in, asking about Deagle and Gollum in the ring, and his questions play as we're back in Gollum's cave, chasing after our bird. Deagle, for the uninitiated, was Smeagol's friend who found the One Ring in a riverbed. Smeagol then murdered him for the ring. It should be noted at this point that Gollum's voice actor has grown on me a lot. There are times when it's real cringe, but I think he's a much better voice actor than I gave him credit for. Following the bird, we come to find Grishnag bumbling around below the cliff we're perched on. We follow after him because we're antisocial and feel betrayed by him leaving us behind. We watch as he wanders blindly and save him from getting caught by orcs, like a guardian angel. Only we're a real messed up guardian angel because our plan is to feed him to Shelob, the giant spider that guards the passage out of Mordor. Wandering about in the dark, we lead the Grishnag forward, crawling and opening passages for him to walk through. After telling him to wait for us, we meet with the Spider Queen herself, although she's less than friendly. A chase sequence begins. The camera flips to face Gollum, which throws me off and gets me killed instantly, but once I get used to it, it isn't terrible. There are green marks on the ground to guide the player on the best path, the marks bunching up when it's time to jump. There's a brief platforming section separating the running sequence, and it has a cool scene where Shelob drops from the ceiling while Gollum is platforming down. The second act of the running sequence is much like the first. Overall, these are not my favorite types of levels in video games, though they always remind me of Crash Bandicoot, which I remember fondly. In this game though, it was easily a highlight. It took me a few runs and I risked burning the pizza I had in the oven, but it felt good to beat it. Saddled with a choice, I take the Smeagol path and warn the Grishnag about danger, but it's a meaningless choice because he's still killed by the spider. I got an achievement for killing the Grishnag in every chapter he appears in, because I'm a great friend and video game player.
Lies.
That's when you murdered him. Right there by the river, in the flower beds. You killed your friend.
Close the door.
What did he say?
Too much about too little.
Chapter 7 begins like Chapter 6 with Gollum accosted by Gandalf, except now we're done with the flashback sequence. Continuing our weird slave prisoner simulator, Gandalf convinces the elves to let us roam about, and we begin trying to escape from the elves immediately. There's a blind elven girl in the cell across from us we're told to avoid, although it's obvious the game wants us to interact with her. I, however, do as intended and avoid her simply out of disinterest. In the garden courtyard, a few elves sit and talk about a previous prisoner escaping via the river, which prompts Gollum to attempt this in turn. The elvish level design is much easier on the eyes, generally brighter, and more tolerable than Mordor from initial pass. Swimming in the water is actually worthwhile because the visibility is much greater when one isn't swimming in blood. There's even river flora that makes it a unique and enjoyable section of the environment. Though it should be noted, the player is unable to kill any of the guard elves, so you're forced to sneak every time. After some platforming around environments with more color than seen the entire game, Gollum is caught by the elves, who knew exactly what he was up to and mock him for even trying to escape. They lore drop the Ring of Haze, a magical barrier preventing anyone from leaving or entering the Elven realm without consent. Though thwarted, Gollum does reunite with his bird, sending the avian to find help. Back in the free-range Elven... How did the bird get in? How did the bird get in? How did the bird get out? Back in the free-range Elven prison, we finally do meet with the blind elf by force of the story. This elf, Mel, who I'm pretty sure is just Grimes, is in jail for her own protection rather than any crime, according to the Elven guards. After getting to know her, bringing her food, if only to get more information about the Ring of Haze, Mel wants to collude with Gollum. After making him drink from a snail shell, the two form a telepathic bond, allowing them to speak to one another. How this works is inconsistent in my opinion. The game implies it uses water, and you often speak to Mel through pools, the first instance happening when looking into a river. Some sections, it could be argued all the mist in the air is acting as a conduit, but there are sections where the two are conversing without water at all. For instance, the Riddlemaster's residence. The two talk the whole time Gollum is exploring it, and even when opening the door to the place, but after that they need the pool in the bedroom to converse. It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, Mel asks Gollum to go get a silver bell, one that'll let her out of her prison. It's kept by the king, which seems a bit extra.
Above the Queen's waterfalls is a cave with hundreds of lights. We call it the Glittering Grotto. She did not live to see it through. However, the grotto still leads right to the king's doorsteps.
But the elves won't let us go up there.
So many rules, but we don't care about rules, do we?
To get there, Gollum sneaks past some guards and then climbs up a bell tower, ringing it to progress. He makes a pit stop at the Riddlemaster's room, the man who created the Ring of Haze, Mel's friend, Gwendol. Gollum looks for another shell here and then leaves to ring a second bell tower, which will allow him to access the king's chambers.
Precious!
Don't break a leg.
It should be noted these two bell towers look wonderful, in my opinion, and the big water basin between the two of them is very aesthetically pleasing. After some more platforming, Gollum makes his way up to the king's chambers where a giant harp is, for some reason. Playing it activates an overly designed sealing mechanism. Gollum traverses it to grab the bell Mel needs, which is hanging there for some reason. Right as Gollum is about to leave, the king and Gandalf appear, having a heated discussion about, well, Gollum. The two pace along the space with the expectation that the player will sneak along with them, listening to their argument. Personally, I tried to exit the area, finding what I thought was the door out, only it wouldn't open. I waited until the end of the argument, and it still didn't open. Eventually I got caught, and the game reloaded me into a second room near the intended exit. I guess I had this level all wrong, and for once the game actually helped me out. Truthfully, I am astonished by how long this chapter is, and how boring it is. Aware of my antics, the king sends his guards after me, forcing me to sneak through the gardens to get back to my cell. I'm avoiding guards who want to bring me to my cell because I want to get there myself. I'm sure the logic is that they would confiscate the bell, but I really doubt if Gollum stuck it under his loincloth, they'd take it.
He's crossing the river!
Crossing over a river.
He's crossing the river!
Climbing up a tower.
He's crossing the river!
This segment is easily the most visually enjoyable in the game.
He's crossing the river!
Go sleep.
Eventually, I find my way back into the cellar, placing the bell on the trinket holding Mel in her cell. The entirety of this chapter was all to open a door for someone I don't really know or care about. Incredible. Free, Grimes and I set off to drop a new album. I lead her down to the river, the usually populated courtyard empty.
Go ahead, to the waterfall. I'll be right behind you.
They're already there.
She uses her nature girl powers to talk to the river, and a waterfall stops. This allows us to pass through a secret tunnel out into the open air. Finally, I am free, and the chapter ends. Chapter 8 starts with our bird returning to the Candleman, having previously been sent by Gollum for help. Again, I have no idea how the bird got through the haze. The Mouth of Sauron is worried about Gandalf and tasks the Candleman with recovering Gollum. Cutting to Mel and Gollum, the two roam through the forest with their newfound freedom. Mel questions Gollum more about a rumor that Gwendol, the Riddle Master, is still alive. Mel and Gwendol have been portrayed as very close during these last few chapters, so this is of the utmost importance to her. Gollum, who had lied about knowing if the Riddle Master was alive, almost mistakes Mel's ring for his precious.
What's this? Precious? Eh? What is it?
Are you looking at my ring?
Is it nice? Yes? Is it powerful? Is it precious?
This creates a surprisingly tense scene, and a part of me really thought he was just going to rip her finger off. This is easily like the most tense part of the game, surprisingly. Mel introduces Gollum to truthlings, small insects that act like, well, truth serum. Mel has Gollum collect a lichen for her that can negate this. Gollum and Smeagol argue over using the lichen, with Smeagol opting not to.
Good choice.
Mel and Gollum then walk through the truthlings in a warping purple haze, and Mel reveals to Gollum that he won't remember anything he tells her. Setting up for the night in an old bell tower, Mel asks Gollum about the phases of the moon as she romanticizes it, though Gollum objects, scared of the moon's watching face. Gollum collects food for his new friend, moving out through the bell tower and out into a little area where different food is dispersed. Instead of being able to simply go back the way I came, though, I'm forced to traverse through the trees and circle back to Mel. This feels like a waste of my time and designed to simply extend playtime, though maybe I'm just mad because I kept dying. I unintentionally got an achievement for collecting all the food. Mel doesn't end up eating the mushroom I offered to her, which doesn't endear me to her. As an original character created for this game, it's almost comical how unlikable Mel is. I wouldn't be surprised if she was some writer's self-insert or an elven reflection of someone's dream girl. Our bird returns to Gollum, bringing bad aura, as Mel calls it, foul.
I don't like the sound of this one. It speaks a strange tongue.
That night, a dark whisper echoes through the forest, and purple orbs begin appearing everywhere. These miasmic orbs do damage upon being touched. Escaping, Gollum separates from Mel and runs through the same platforming sequence done to collect the food. This again feels very disrespectful to my time. Looping back, a mechanic is introduced of ringing bells to dissipate the orbs. This only works for the orbs right next to the bells, and this only happens in this section. It makes me wonder why they even bothered putting this in, as it adds very little. Everything in this section feels like it was designed to lengthen playtime without adding substance. Much like in the spider caves, this section shows off how difficult it can be to dodge hazards when vertical. Catching up with Mel, who heard Gwendol's voice in her head, we escape the orbs and enter a glade. This is the border of the realm and has a large tree where a ritual can be performed to get through the haze undetected. Previously, a ritual was done here to close a gap in the haze, one that disappeared Gwendol, killed all of Mel's friends, and left her blind. Surely, this will work out.
Ghosts?
This sequence is a puzzle where Gollum must indicate who stood at which spot around the tree. Using his sense, Gollum finds an object, which will lead to another object or directly back to a spot around the tree. Gollum will then tell Mel who stood there based on the object and the lore Mel provides, and the process starts all over again. The most difficult aspect of this puzzle is just finding the objects to begin with, the rest is easy. At one point I had all the parties in place but one, but because I hadn't found the clue for this last person, the game wouldn't let me suggest them to Mel. This felt like a great oversight, as Mel repeatedly told Gollum the names of all of her friends, so it's simple elimination to figure out which one was the missing person. This is what makes poor game design. After getting everyone in place, Mel begins the ritual, opening a breach through the haze. Gollum and Smeagol have an argument over if they should rest, and we convince Mel to keep moving. Smeagol tries to convince Mel to forget about Gwendol, simping hard for Milady.
Mel doesn't need the Riddle Master anymore. Maybe Riddle Master is gone. Forever.
I heard his voice.
A ghost, perhaps. A voice in the wind. But Smeagol is here now. So lucky she met Smeagol.
He then flashes back to the murder of Deagle, scaring the Huz.
We didn't do it.
While he isn't looking, she flees into the breach. Upset, Smeagol runs in after her, shouting her name. What a simp. The chapter ends, except it doesn't. Gollum now runs through the purple mist, shouting and looking for Mel. The landscape loops as thick purple fog rolls around, ominous. It's not an incredible segment, but it has one glaring issue. It takes forever. I'm convinced this is bugged. I ran through this purple haze for a solid 20 minutes. At one point, I went on TikTok and just held the joystick up. I eventually had to Google it to see if something was wrong or if I was just misunderstanding. After resetting the game, I ran again, waiting. I don't know if it was something not flagging or if I was moving too fast and the game couldn't load properly, or what. I ended up slowing to a trot and the exit appeared within 30 seconds. Though I know there were times in my long first run where I stopped moving altogether, though I don't know if it was the loading thing. I just don't know. After coming out into a clearing, Gollum is again captured by the elves.
Hello, Smeagol. So well behaved lately. How can I pester you now without torturing my conscience?
Have the elves found her?
No, I'm afraid not. I don't think there is much hope she's coming back. Face it, she used you, and then she left you behind. We warned you to keep your distance.
Praise be, Chapter 8 ends and Chapter 9 begins. At this point, I'm excited to never think about this game ever again. It opens with Gollum hanging out in Mel's cell until he's told by an elf to go talk to the cook. He does, agreeing to collect charged rocks for the chef to light her lanterns for the big festival tonight. It's the festival episode. After some light platforming, Gollum collects the rocks, but overhears the king talking to two elves. The king wants the elves to find out what Gollum told Gandalf, the lore of the ring. They plan to use the Truthlings, so using what he learned from Mel, Gollum goes to collect the lichen that acts as an antidote. Gollum then goes to the garden with the two elves, and they task him with climbing up the old tower, lying that one of the cook's missing stones is there. This is a ploy to get him near the Truthlings. Gollum goes along with it, and then throws the Truthlings down at the elves. Under the effect, Gollum asks them about Mel, who is assumed dead. Funny, we also learn Mel's full name is Meliasthol.
Gwendol. He knew Mel quite well. Did you know?
Everyone knew. It wasn't much of a secret.
Emotional damage!
The elves reveal that Gwendol uses his mirror to talk with Mel, and so Gollum goes off to do the same, even though he could just use water anywhere at any time. In Gwendol's house, there's a small puzzle where you're tasked with making the environment match how it's shown in the mirror. Solving this reveals a secret room containing a drawing of Mel and a mysterious talking orb. The orb speaks to Gollum as if Gollum is Mel, and tells that the enemy's treachery, the One Ring, is in the water, confirming Mel's suspicions. Saying that the enemy has come, Gwendol tells Mel to meet him at Caras Minden to help seal the gate and use the picture they carved where they first met as the password. Brightened, Gollum knocks the orb away, and then appears to literally shove it up his loincloth, which is crazy. We use the water to try and talk to Mel, but it fails, so we leave. Finally, returning the stones to the cook, we ask her to take us to the place where Mel and Gwendol first met, and luckily she knows exactly where that is. Again, for some reason, It's the Big Oak in the King's Grove, exactly where the festival feast happens to be tonight. At the festival, Gollum is bullied by local elves. To gain access to the tree, you're forced to play a word game, though I ended up losing.
Lonely.
No, wrong sound. I'm sorry. You lost.
This outcome is funnier in my opinion because Gollum has to go get the cook to fight his battles for him if he loses.
Children, let me go talk to them.
After gaining access to the tree, we start platforming around, elves commenting as we ascend. Eventually, we come to the romantic little spot where Mel and Gwendol first met and carved their picture, and remember when this game was about languishing in a slave pit? Gollum climbs up a bit further to watch the moon, no doubt thinking of Mel, when our little bird joins up, followed by the screams and grunts of orcs. The forces of Mordor have finally arrived, breaching the haze. The orcs are looking specifically for Gollum, so we descend the tree and move into sneak mode. Sneaking past orcs with lanterns, we climb a ladder, and then swing through the trees to safety. I actually had a pretty nasty time here, either getting caught by the orcs or falling to my death. It wasn't a fun time. This chapter wasn't as long as some of the others, but it was still tedious. R.I.P. the cook, I guess.
Mel! They found Mel! We heard the orc say it! The ruins in the mountains. That's where they took her, they said. Cautious, my precious. Elves, orcs, avoid them all.
Chapter 10, the final chapter, begins with Gollum expositing that the orcs got through the haze with Mel's help, and they've taken her to the ruins, the same ruins where Gwendol is. Moving through the trees, we come across an elf guard camp and are forced to sneak through it. After passing through, it's another tree limb platforming section. I guess because it's the final chapter, we gotta hit all the classics. We come out of the trees and witness a stalemate between the Beastmaster, our old boss from the slave pit, and Cruel Elf, a woman we saw around the elf jail. Tasked with choosing who dies, I throw a stone at the Beastmaster to distract him so she can kill him, only for some reason the game decides that me throwing a stone at him distracts her and he kills her. Baffled, I'm not sure what I was expecting at this point.
Good master!
Run, you dimwit!
The next section is Escape the Orcs, and if I wasn't so close to the end of this game, I would quit here. The main gist is platforming with enemies chasing after you. Most are on the ground level, but they have bows and fire at you if they can't catch you. There's no checkpoint in this entire section, meaning you have to do it perfectly in one go to progress. It's so dark, even when playing in the dark, I have to constantly spam Gollum sense just to know what I'm looking at. I easily attempted this section over 50 times and I died in every way. Orc got me, orc shot me, input lag, no input, drown, break head on ground, burn in fire. I hate this section and it's everything wrong with this game. Sitting on the edge of the cliff after beating it, I was relieved. Head empty, I went to move on with the game and I jumped for a pole out of reach. Reloading, it took me all the way back to the start of Escape the Orcs. The game doesn't save until you finish one tiny platforming section at the end, and I had no idea. Crushed, I had to beat the section all over again. Luckily, it was only 4 attempts between my first winning run and my second, but still, it felt hateful or worse, like no one cared at all when making this game. There are so many orcs thrown into this section, it makes my Xbox Series S shudder at the rendering points. The ground mesh catches Gollum constantly on nothing at all. It really makes me feel like this game wasn't loved during creation.
There are fires! Candleman and his orcs. Where is Mel?
Moving on into the garden ruins, I'm greeted with more orcs. Fun fact, every time I reload near orcs, the voice line,
"You gave her water." No water!
plays for some reason, and it has since chapter 2. There's a long sneak section that's almost maze-like, though I feel like the placement of hiding bushes is generous, so I don't have much of a problem here. Finishing the section, Gollum stumbles out in front of the Candleman, which I find insulting after all my hard work. He's captured Mel, who's tasked with opening the door to the haze's source. Gollum helps her, and the two use a puddle of water to communicate without their captor knowing. There's a neat door puzzle to recreate the deer drawing seen on the tree in the previous chapter. The door opens, and Mel uses her superpower, being blind, to pull Gollum through a door while a blinding light stuns him and the Candleman. This enables one of my least favorite tropes, a character saying they've been blinded while the TV flashes bright lights to blind you in turn. Safely locked inside, we begin navigating the ruins, with Mel snapping at poor Smeagol.
Why did you come here?
We never leave our friend alone, do we? No, not us.
Friend? I wonder how your friend Deagle would feel about that word today.
After Gollum platforms through a wind room floating around on stones, Mel finally meets up with Gwendol, and as they embrace, Gollum is left third wheeling.
Mel.
It
reminded me. He's with us.
It's almost uncomfortable to watch, honestly, as Gollum crawls forward, watching the woman he's been simping for embrace another man. The two speak in Elvish for a moment to further ice him out. If they speak in Elvish, what's the point of the DLC?
Eliot anim hiritjen, ar fen Eliatha, iden ad legi thank.
Henian.
Gwendol tells Mel and Gollum that the source must be disabled and brings them to view it, platform pieces swirling around it. Gollum is tasked with taking out one of the towers, while Gwendol goes to take out the other. The tower consists of the expected platforming. Upon return, Mel informs Gollum that her lover boy hasn't hit back and sends the little cuck after him.
Find the nice elf, yes, at once.
Going into the left tower, it isn't long before we find Gwendol. He's broken his leg, but is fine letting us do the work for him. He levitates rocks to create a staircase up for us, but this begs the question, why can he levitate a rock but not his own body? We again do some minor platforming, achieving our objective.
There you are. And again it's Smeagol who helps, not that other elf.
As we start looping back, we have the penultimate argument.
Mel would look out for us. Look out for us? It doesn't have her eyes left, does it? I wish the Riddle Master was dead.
My first instinct is no, it's not like Mel is going to end up with Gollum anyway. But there's an issue. I've been doing a full Smeagol run. Every choice offered, I take the Smeagol way out. This time though, it's Gollum who wants to keep Gwendol alive and Smeagol who wants him dead. So we're killing him, I guess. The final argument occurs moments later as we watch an orc hunt for the crippled Gwendol. Smeagol is tasked with persuading Gollum, listing off everyone he's helped. This feels like a weird topic of discussion when the winning outcome is killing a guy.
We helped the cook, brought her all her lights. Beautiful lights, and how pretty they all shines on her pale body now.
Don't fret too much though, I lose the final argument. I think it's fitting in a weird way that after a perfect Smeagol streak I lose last second. But also, I don't want Gwendol to die, so it's a lose-lose win-win. A draw. It's a draw.
Elves will let us leave now.
With Gwendol safe and hanging out, we go on forward to meet up with Mel. We see the area around the source is now occupied by the Candleman and co. I talk with a hiding Mel who's levitating in the cutscene for some reason, before going at the source. Jumping up the floating fragments circling it, orcs shoot at me as the Candleman says his evil chants. At the top, I'm able to destroy this Eye of Magnus ripoff, leading to an explosion. Crawling out of the rubble, we run off to look for Mel. Finding the Candleman taking aim, Gollum platforms through a short maze-like section of rubble. As Gollum is about to meet the business end of a crossbow, Little One, our sometimes trustworthy bird, ruins the shot. Life saved, Gollum promptly strangles the Candleman to death. Gollum then reunites with Mel, who immediately asks for Gwendol. Gollum then gets the incel ending, where he watches Mel and Gwendol, the Rizzle Master, embrace.
Very happy ending.
As the two lovebirds lay with one another, the game hypes an ending where Gollum then murders his new friends. He doesn't follow through though, opting to drop a gear and disappear instead.
Smeagol?
We see Gollum wandering west on his way to the Shire. Our bird lands beside us, and we're given the final choice of the game. In my final act, I let little one live, even though he's a snitch. He flies off, maybe to ruin somebody else's realm. I thought the game was over at this point, but it continues on with Gollum in the mines of Moria. We watch as he pushes against the door like a feeble gimlet, unable to get it open. We leave him there, as his screams can faintly be heard from outside, the secret door to the mine shown. Finally, the game is over. It's obvious from the playthrough that gameplay here is weak at best, broken at worst. For controls, Gollum feels super floaty, often continuing to move a bit after the input is stopped. Other times the input isn't registered at all, especially on hanging sections. This can lead to a bit of whiplash, where you have to be light on the controls in some places, but heavy in others. This oscillation can kill a run pretty quick if you're not mindful. Otherwise, the controls seem standard for a platformer of this type. Having to run to long jump makes sense, for instance. It can take a second to get out of the crawling position, which can make escaping in stealth sections a bit more difficult. The movement types all have their own issues. Jumping can be easily under and overshot. This is especially noticeable when leaping to and from tree branches. Gollum can catch on the floor in seemingly random places, making running a bit hit or miss. In hub locations, stamina seems to be nerfed, making running almost useless. Climbing vertically is fine when there's no moving hazard, but any kind of spider or miasmic orb can make it tedious. Hanging horizontally is fine, there's a stamina bar, but I've never run out of stamina when doing this, so it seems a bit pointless. Swinging from poles is a total chore, and good luck catching that pole to begin with. Doing different motions in swift conjunction can feel clunky, like doing the cart riding section. Moving across the top of the cart, hanging down over the ledge, and then climbing back up all feels very much like separate actions with a lag between each movement. This lack of fluidity adds tension, but not the intended kind. In moments where the question should be, can I do this? It instead becomes, will the game let me do this? This, in my opinion, is a death blow for a platformer where the skill of the user is meant to be measured. Companion mode, controlling non-Gollum characters, does little to add to the game and only appears in a handful of sections. This was interesting to me because it felt like it had two tutorials, the one leading the Grishnig in the Beast Pit and the one leading the bird in the Tower of Light. I really assumed it was going to come up a lot more than it did because of these two tutorials. I'm not sure if more companion mode content was cut, although I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Especially given that Mel is blind, it really seems weird that there wouldn't be a section where Gollum has to guide her by voice alone. Chapter 8, after all the orbs invade the old bell tower, would have been a perfect spot to implement this. On the inverse, the sense mechanic is something used throughout the game, but wasn't as cooked as it ought to have been. The orange flow, used to help the player progress, was often unhelpful, appearing either way further down the path or still lingering in a place that I'd already progressed past. Its enemy highlight feature was useful, and so was the illumination effect, though the illumination wasn't as useful in some of the elven sections. The items in the game were bland, with all the food items having the exact same effect, restoring the same amount of health. I think the limit of only 5 food items is a fine cap for this resource, but I found that I either had 0 food or 5 food, rarely ever an in-between. Rocks, however, could have been a lot more useful than they were. Rocks were occasionally placed where needed for distraction, but having them in more places would have encouraged more experimentation. I also think a second throwable, like a large rock, would have been a good addition. They could have used it to kill the helmet orcs, but the trade-off would be you could only hold one. I think this would be a balanced way to help players struggling with one specific section get by. And speaking of, the enemies of this game are lacking. While standard orcs can be strangled, orcs with helmets, the elves, the beasts, they're all untouchable, leading to mostly sneaking around. While I'm fine with stealth sections, having the option to be more aggressive with enemies would have lent to a more personalized experience. This is important because the game narrows into choosing either Gollum or Smeagol, and widening the approach to enemies would make a second playthrough way more interesting. That is, the player could do a sneak-first Smeagol playthrough and then follow it with a combat-first Gollum run. Overall, the gameplay is lacking in refinement and interest. Some sections, like the Shelob chase sequence, are fun strays from the usual grind, but they're few and far between. The majority of the player experience consists of poor platforming broken up by traversing hub environments.
That is where we created the Ring of Haze, the Riddle Master, his squires, and I. There at the creek, beyond an old bell tower, we closed the final breach, and I lost the light of my eyes.
The level design of the game can really be split into 3 sections. The first is the traverse section. The player is tasked with going from point A to B, sometimes sneaking past or running past enemies, other times avoiding environmental hazards. This is the majority of the game, from the introduction of Gollum running to his cave, to the ending of Gollum running through a maze of rubble towards the Candleman. These may have additional gimmicks, weirdly placed platforms, or multiple paths forward. Next is the stealth and chase section. This involves moving forward while remaining hidden using bushes and shadows to either move to a new location or stalk a selected target. Stalking requires Gollum to stay within a range as added difficulty. Third would be puzzle, which is self-explanatory. This includes breeding the owl, breaching the haze, and solving the deer door. Some events, like placing explosives, finding slave tags, finding charge stones, fall between this trifecta, but in general the game takes place within this triangle. While the aesthetics do well to refresh these concepts halfway through the game, it really is more or less the same beats throughout, with small variation. And these variations, the Shelob chase, the deer door, while wonderful here, wouldn't be notable in another game.
Something must have drawn you away. A voice calling you to the land of shadow.
Leave us alone!
Whispering your name in your dream.
Now I know we've gone through the slogfest together, but let's quickly review the story. The game starts with Gollum interviewed by Gandalf recounting his capture and torture by the Nazgul. He's dumped into a slave pit where he helps the Frail Man plan an escape. After blowing up a bridge, Gollum comes to the attention of the Candleman, the overseer of the slave pit. Gollum acts as his informant for a few years and breeds his own bird, Little One. Finally ready to escape, Gollum uses a new prisoner, the Grishnig, a former cart driver, in his plan. Before using his bird to steal the Candleman's keys, Gollum sets the Grishnig up to be executed. In the execution chamber, he saves the Grishnig, and the two steal a cart out of Mordor. On the way out, they're separated, and Gollum continues his escape. The two meet back up, and the Grishnig is killed by Shelob, and Gollum continues until he's captured by elves. In the Elven realm, Gollum is interviewed by Gandalf before finding a friend in Mel, a blind elf. He learns about the Riddle Master, creator of the Haze, a barrier preventing him from leaving. Gollum steals a bell from the king to free Mel, and the two escape. In the forest, Gollum and Mel make it to the Haze and try to get through it. Mel leaves Gollum behind, passing through, and Gollum is returned to jail. At the festival, orcs invade, passing through the Haze thanks to Mel. Gollum goes to ancient ruins after a hint from the Riddle Master and finds Mel captured by the Candleman. The two pass into the ruins where the source of the Haze rests. There they meet with the Riddle Master Gwendol, Mel's lover. After trying to shut the source down and saving Gwendol, Gollum comes face to face with the Candleman, killing him. Gollum leaves the couple, getting trapped in Moria. This narrative falls into the non-canonical side of The Lord of the Rings, meaning that while canonical characters like Gollum and Gandalf appear, the actual story presented isn't written by Tolkien. Essentially, this is licensed fanfiction. And as licensed fanfiction, there are some hurdles. The first being the canonical timeline. The game takes place after The Hobbit, where Gollum loses the ring, but before The Lord of the Rings, where the Wraiths go to the Shire. This limits what can be done in the game. Gollum can't have a change of heart and not give up Bilbo to the Wraiths, for instance. And because we know Gollum goes on to be in The Lord of the Rings, he can't die or have any character-altering events happen. Thus, everything is designed to be inconsequential. It has to be, after all. And you can feel that in everything that happens. Gollum's time in the pit feels as meaningless as the time that passes. Years are skipped within the Mordor chapters because it has no effect on anything. All of the characters introduced end up dead. The Candleman can be spared, as can the Beastmaster and some of the elves, but it all feels like the game guides you towards killing them. Perhaps because they have no place in the canon and thus no future. Even then, they're more plot devices than characters, just as the Grishnig is more of a tool. The only real exception to this is Mel. Mel eats the entire second half of the plot, but this comes with one major issue. I don't care about Mel. I don't care about what she's got going on, why she's in jail, about her dead, not dead boyfriend, her dead friends. I don't find her charming or quirky or cool. I'm not impressed by her super special connection with nature. I really don't care about her. A lot of things surrounding Mel feel too unbelievable for a game about a gremlin and a magic ring. The idea that the King of the Realm would keep the key to her jail specifically is beyond my suspension of disbelief. Mel could be more forgivable if she was a good introduction to elven culture or served as anything more than Gollum's manic pixie dream girl. To make a game about an established character from a beloved series and then use the second half of the game to focus on someone else's self-insert is diabolical. And in the end, even Mel is expendable. If Gollum wins out over Smeagol, he smashes her head in with a rock. Story and lore are so important to the world of Middle-earth, and there's so much to explore in Tolkien's world. I wish this game had leaned more into the world rather than using it as a set dressing for a cuck-flavored slave simulator. Though honestly, given how bad the gameplay is, perhaps it's a blessing that the story is unenjoyable. It makes leaving this game in the trash pile easier.
Ah, this face looks like the one in the Riddlemaster's rooms.
You found him. That's good. Now put out the lights.
Why us? Smeagol doesn't want to be here. But Smeagol has promised to help, hasn't he? Yes, he has.
The aesthetics of this game come in two obvious flavors, Mordor and Elven. For Mordor, we're looking at lots of red and black, lots of lava, and somehow lots of darkness even though we're surrounded by lava. An abundance of nonsensical wooden structures, hatching to climb up, gears, and ores galore. Mordor straight up sucks. It's ugly, unpleasant, but just plain hard to see. I have no doubt this section would be more enjoyable if I could just see it, but, you know, this wouldn't be as large of an issue if it wasn't literally half the game. The Elven sections, on the other hand, are actually really pleasing to look at. The flora, the rivers, bell towers, pools. It has a lot to love, and it's extremely refreshing to the eyes at the halfway point. Some areas are dark, but not in a way that compares to Mordor, at least not until Chapter 10. At one point, after climbing up to the top of the old bell tower, I stopped to enjoy the scenery, the only time I had done this the entire run. The faces of the elves themselves looked weird, almost alien, but aside from cutscenes, this wasn't an issue. As I mentioned while playing, the models of this game aren't the best, and some border on freaky. The Candleman looks fine, Gandalf looks mid, Gwendol looks like Avatar Kyoshi, Gollum is just straight up chopped. The credits show the voice actor for Gollum also did face capture, and I would have zero idea aside from this mention. Speaking of, the credits look like a PowerPoint slideshow. Basic gray background with some images, terrible font, it looks very last minute. This is similar to the argument screen where Gollum or Smeagol sit in front of a gray, smoggy nothingness. I'm sure they were going for some kind of representation of internal space, but it just comes across like they forgot to include the asset. The music is actually the best part of this game. While not as iconic as the movie's soundtrack, it does a great job of filling up empty space in a way that isn't overbearing but still sets the tone. My least favorite track was easily Mines of Mordor, if only because I spent so much time listening to it. The track itself, without the trauma tied to it, is well done, with a nice crescendo peaking in power around 3/4 in. Tones of hopelessness, solitude, and desperation can be found strewn throughout the tracks. When the tracks are listened to in succession, though, it does become overbearing. My favorite track was Thornwell's Halls, if only because it was the least droning or unsettling. Still, I think the team behind the soundtrack did exactly what was asked of them, and in doing so, made a terrible experience a little less terrible. A 7-inch vinyl was pressed of Gollum's theme and the Mirkwood theme as part of promotional material. If anyone has this and doesn't want it, feel free to send it my way. It would be a fun memento of my suffering. Overall, I give this game a 2 out of 10. It's a lot like Gollum himself. Miserable, inexcusable, tainted, marred, choking, I could go on. The highlights of this game would be the lows of other more competent games, and there's a reason you'd be pressed to find somebody who actually finds this game acceptable. Honestly, you'd be pressed to find anybody who genuinely cares about this game in any way. Cleaning up the script post-playthrough, I was plagued by information gaps. Story beats no one cared to talk about, glitches no one cared to record, missing info from fan wiki pages if there was a page at all. I said before that I got the feeling this game wasn't loved by its creators, and in seeing the sparse coverage, it seems it wasn't loved by the public either. I understand why, of course, but as a Lord of the Rings fan, it does make me a little sad this game couldn't even find a few dedicated souls. There's still an X account up for this game, and the last tweet is an apology. It feels fitting. Rumors of a toxic work environment, underpayment, crunch time swirl around this game post-launch, and maybe that's a part of its faint legacy. A tapestry of mistakes, sewing mismanagement with paid lore and hair physics. There's nothing to love here, and that's what makes me wish I did love it. I wish it wasn't meaningless. I wish I could just shake Gollum by the shoulders and set him right, off into the world on good footing. A friend came over as I was finishing this project up. Not taking me at my word about the state of this, we booted up the game. I watched death after death, traps I'd fallen into, paths I didn't take. At the end of Chapter 2, that great filter, the game soft-locked, Gollum dying instantly after every reload. Stunned, my perspective changed. Maybe I'd been playing with Smeagol all along. Maybe it could have been much worse. Anyway, thanks for watching, Precious. I'll see you next time.